There are four big decisions that dentists make throughout their career: finding their first job, buying their first practice, hiring their first associate, and selling that practice. Paul, Dr. Nacho Goodman. I'm so proud to be here with DDS Match, key resource and sponsor of the Dental Nachos Group. And they're going to share with us so much value on how you can be successful in making major career decisions. If you would like to learn more about how to buy a practice with success and not stress, just text BUY to 215-543-6454. If you're looking to sell your dental practice so you can move on to the next stage of your career, text the word sell to 215-543-6454, and we will get you connected with the right people to help you make the best decisions. I'm so thrilled to have Mike Rogers, transition specialist from DDS Match, with me on the podcast. Mike, just share with our audience, what do you do in your daily life? You get up each day and help dentists not mess up major career decisions. Tell us a little bit about a day in the life of Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me first, Paul.
Sure.
I appreciate it. So the day in the life of Mike Rogers, I guess starting from the business side, right?
Any side you like. I like people to know our people. I always say that, dentists can bring their people self first and then their dentisting self second. So you have chosen to help us, the dentist, in major career decisions. So just give us a little summary of one of your days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm an avid fitness junkie.
Oh, cool.
So I go to the gym first thing in the morning. Most days I take a cold plunge or cold bath because I'm one of those crazy people. And then I'll go to the gym, usually work out with my wife at the gym, and come home, get ready, obviously, for the day, and then start to work through what I'm going to do for the day to take care of some of my existing clients.
So you have a treatment plan, just like dentist treatment plan patients. First of all, I've heard of the cold plunge. One of my good friends, Dr. Mark Costa, is very into the cold plunge. Do you still have coffee or just the cold plunge? Because I'm a big coffee drinker. I don't know if I can get into
love coffee.
Okay, so you can still do both.
Yeah, I definitely don't need all the caffeine that I take, but I'm a coffee junkie.
Yeah, I like that too. So you treatment plan your day with helping both buyers and sellers make decisions, and we're going to get into some great questions. They add value to our audience. But let's just say someone's like listening to this and never worked with a transition specialist, never worked with a transition broker, whether it's the calls you make on the phone, whether it's the text messages, whether it's the Zoom calls. Like, who are you connecting with as clients? Where are these dentists in their career?
Oh my goodness, everywhere in their career. From third and fourth year dental students, not a lot of third year, but a lot of fourth year dental students, to people that are ready to sell today. And every once in a while I have someone that I've helped sell that maybe is post dentistry, and just to connect and see how retirement's treating them.
Yeah. You never know where life takes you. I was just doing a C course last night, and a dentist in his early 50s sold to a DSO in his late 40s, fulfilled his requirements, then moved across the state and opened up a practice, or bought a practice from a transitions broker, because you never know where life takes you. And I actually asked him, I know we're going to dig into this. I said, were you glad you did it? Were you glad you had sold to a DSO? And he said, for me, yes, because it was the only way for me to, dental pun intended, extract myself from that practice. I don't know the full details of it, but I think he had a partner. The partner wasn't sure if we wanted to buy him out. So there's so many decisions dentists need to make. And I'm so proud to have DDS Match and Mike Rogers, who's in the St. Louis and Eastern Missouri, Central and Southern Illinois area, because you may have noticed dental school doesn't cover any of this, does it? I mean, if you talk to any dental students that, hey, we had a great class on how to buy or sell a practice, or is it still pretty much empty or lacking any sort of education in that area?
At least the local schools are lacking education in that area. If they're lucky, there's usually a professor that owns a practice that maybe has like an evening course for a couple hours where they talk about it. But for the most part, there's no curriculum involved. And usually the first time I reach out to the fourth year president to schedule a lunch and learn to come educate them or schedule a happy hour, they don't know what I do. right? So it's just getting them to understand that there's professionals like us that can help them to educate them what the market looks like, right? With the pros and cons of an associate position with a private practice versus a DSO versus public health.
And
Um, we-
I love what you're sharing, because I'm a big fan of educate yourself before you need to take that action step. So
Absolutely.
D2 should learn about dental insurance. Are they going to own a practice tomorrow? No, but they should start to learn how dental insurance works, understand that it's a thing. There's so many people, I put together the whole transition team. I mean, you have brokers, you have dental focused attorneys, you have dental focused accountants, you have banks. And I just
Right.
think it's never too early to start learning about who you need on your team to be successful. And we've seen many nightmares. I've seen them personally. I've had made errors myself. I'd have a lot more money if I met someone like you back in 2010, Mike. But that was the olden days. I had a Hotmail account and 4 friends. So now we're here in this world. So we're going to go through a few questions that add value to our audience, because
Okay.
these huge decisions, they impact people's family, right? They impact people's finances. They impact people's future. And it's so key to make them with eyes wide open, with responsible information. So let's start with, what advice would you have for a dentist if they're looking to hire an associate for a future purchase or exit strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love this question. I'm seeing more and more of this. And right, this process isn't necessarily for everyone, but doctors, owners that are looking to create an exit strategy that's maybe a couple of years down the road, but they have demand in their practice today for an associate, or they have the physical logistics to accommodate an associate.
Yeah.
This makes a lot of sense. And assuming, right, that the owner wants to work with another dentist, which I find most of them do. They want to share what they've learned throughout the years, the successes they've had, whether that's from the clinical side or the business side or just leading a team. I guess the biggest advice would be to take your time to find the right associate.
Yeah.
Because in this strategy, they're typically really looking to find the next owner of the practice. So understanding what you want for your succession to look like, the personality of the clinician, the clinical skills that they bring to the table, and take your time to find that right person. But
Awesome advice, Mike. I'll let you keep going in a second, but I just wanted to kind of
yeah,
reinforce that, I have a close friend who I encouraged to hire an associate 4 years ago, and against his will, he did it. And he goes, "You were right, Paul. I'll never go back to practicing alone again because I don't want to." And I think what you said is right. These dentists, they want to do this, but you've
right.
layered in some great advice. They don't really know the how part. And it really is finding that right fit, understanding you're going to give up some control, figuring out how to implement with a team. When you see this go right, what are some of the characteristics of the dentists that do this right? Whether it's the owner, the associate, tell us about that.
The two biggest things that go right is an effective communication strategy and setting proper expectations.
Yeah.
Right. And that has to be done before the associate ever starts in the interview process. But really before that, it's understanding what you're looking for in that dentist. So then when you are talking with them, you can sort that out. Right. You have an excellent team, a large team, not only in your practice, Paul, but obviously Dental Nachos and the companies you created. So I'm sure you've hired a ton of people.
Yeah.
And so many people, their initial instinct is to hire people that they like personality wise, but not necessarily the best person for the job. So, to your point you made earlier, it's important to have a group of advisors helping you through this process. Whether that's, someone like myself that knows the transitions, your accountant, your financial planner, your lawyer, like those are all people to lean on to help you through this process. But you can set that expectation up front with the associate of this is what it's going to look like the first year, the second year. Here's, when I eventually want to sell, here's the formula we're going to use to create, to determine the sales price. All of those things that are going to happen 3 years down the road or whenever your transition strategy is, having that during the interview. So there's no surprises 3 years down the road. And
I absolutely love that.
Those into the legal documents stating this is exactly what we're going to do.
And that one of my favorite words, someone I follow a lot, Gary Vee, talks about is context. Too many often dentists, I know you help dentists hire associates like I do. I say, oh, you want an associate, why don't you meet some? They go, oh, my best friend's son is in dental school and he's going to
Right,
come. I go, get more options. Maybe if it's
right,
just to reinforce what you want or what you don't want, but it's wild to me that the most important role in that practice, the other dentist who allows you to go on vacation, covers when you're not there, creates a transition strategy for you. Get as many options as possible, because
right,
we've all been in situations with hires where we just thought someone was going to move forward and they didn't. And sometimes it's not even for a bad reason. Sometimes their spouse gets moved across the country. And I
right.
think dentists, it's wild to me, Mike. They're used to hiring hygienists, they're used to hiring assistants, they're used to hiring front desk team members. And when it comes to the associate dentist, your advice is so great. Make sure it's that right fit for you and make sure expectations are aligned. Because when it comes, I've seen it happen both ways. I mean, have you seen someone expecting someone to buy the practice and then they didn't want to later and the owner is frustrated?
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. Yes, I've seen that just as much as I've seen the
Right.
other, where
And
the
then the other one
associate
is where the
delayed
associate says,
by.
I was supposed to buy into this practice. So
Yes,
set these expectations early. And I think, one of I'm so excited to work with your team. you know, there's a world for private practice, there's a world for DSOs,
right.
and they're currently both existing in their own ways, right? And we'll learn throughout this season and podcasting with the DDS match team, they're just very different lanes of transition strategies when you do this. And I love that you were sharing with us, you can hire an associate dentist and preserve your private practice if you want to, if that's your goal. Is that something that you see?
Absolutely, absolutely, because that is still the dominant portion of the market today, right?
Yeah.
The statistics are all over the place of how much DSOs and private equity and corporate own, right? But most of them say it's roughly 15%, and our data bears that out too. I think
Yeah.
last year 75% of our practices were sold to first-time dentists, first-time buyers, and another 12 to 15 was to someone who this was their second or third location, and the remaining was DSO. So this is still the private practice segment is still thriving in this environment, at least from an ownership standpoint.
Yeah, and I always say, it's be ready for both, right? Just be ready. Learn about both. Understand the ins and
Yes.
outs. I mean, I talk to dentists frequently, and how much longer they want a dentist, as I call it, or dentisting, is a big factor. So, if you're a dentist listening to this and you're connecting with someone like Mike, and when someone like Mike says, when do you want to, be done practicing dentistry, and you say yesterday, makes it almost impossible for a DSO sale to be a fit for you emotionally, right?
Yes.
And then, if you're in your early 50s and you see that you have 10 years left to practice, or 5 years, it could be a fit. So love what you shared here. So in the transition with our transition specialist, what tell us about for dentists considering selling to a DSO? I mean, if I can share with you, I'm a dentist, founder of Dental Nachos, founder of Dentist Job Connect. I've worked as a transition specialist too. I love being in this world, and it changes rapidly, and there's new things happening. So if someone's just saying, hey, I've heard about this DSO thing, Mike Rogers from DDS Match, Dental Nachos key resource and sponsor, what advice do you have for these dentists?
Well, I think it would be similar to the first one, right? And that is take your time.
Yeah.
And to reiterate, hire advisors. I guess that's probably the first advice I would give them, is to remember the majority, almost all DSOs, not all, but almost all of them are backed by private equity groups at this point. And private equity, essentially their entire business model is to buy at a lower price and sell at a higher price. So reminding dentists that they are typically the lower price in that equation, right? Now they're going to bundle your practices and sell it for a higher multiple to another organization. So hopefully you are able to take advantage of that. But is understanding there's a lot more nuances to that world. And to your point earlier about the example of, hey, I've got a friend and his son's in dental school and I'm just going to hire them as the associate. It's the same thing.
Right.
If one DSO gives you an offer and that's all you've talked to, well, then you've only seen one offer. Right? There's a world out there, and they differ dramatically in the culture that they have the clinical autonomy that you get, the financial package and incentives that are driven. So being able to get multiple looks at DSOs to understand, again, what you're really trying to accomplish. Because people's reasons why they sell to a DSO are completely different, right? Maybe it's the financial incentives and the equity that they offer. Some it might just be, I don't want to manage the staff anymore. The marketing and dealing with insurance companies, with the POs and right. So knowing what those DSOs are going to give you and the benefits that they bring to the table is so important to then know which one to partner with.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you, just to reinforce, to use my word again, get a number of options so you just have context. And then, I mean, I've learned, with my good friend Rob Montgomery, I know, a dental focused attorney, sometimes dentists, I'm sure you deal with this, who are on buyer side, they say, what's the interest rate on the loan? What's the interest rate on the loan? What's the interest rate on the loan? And you say, it's more than just the interest rate, right? It's more than the interest rate. And now on the other side of this journey, the seller can't just be, it's all about the purchase price. It's all about the enterprise value, because,
multiple.
I always say this, like, if you sell your house, you don't live in it with the new people for 3 years, right? So you sell your practice with DSO, you're still in your house, right? And, good DSOs strive, I'm sure, to create as little disruption as possible. But if we go to this pros and cons list, of the DSO sale, maybe give us one or two on each side of the DSO pros and cons sales.
Sure. Well, to what you just hit on, knowing that the DSOs are going to require you to stay in your practice for 3 to 5 years at this point. And it really is going to depend on the size of your practice and how specialized it is, for one, and the location of how long they want you to stay on board. So, that could be a pro, that could be a con, right? That could go either way. The pro is, a lot of times they can take some of the headaches that come with owning a business off of your table. So again, whether that's marketing to get new patients, or managing staff, or dealing with insurance companies, right? There's different things that they can offer. Pros, it could be financial. Again, it's so nuanced. So it's hard to say. I guess I don't have a lot.
Well, I think what you're sharing there, and someone who is a dentist practicing, just so I can, we're educating this audience, and we'll go to the cons in a second, is having an answer to one of your biggest decisions can be comforting to people. So, if someone sells 80% of their practice to XYZ DSO, they have a financial answer to 80% of their practice. And people can make many arguments and saying, you could get more money if you can work for 3 more years and sell to a private buyer. And they're likely true, right? But it's always about, us dentists, Mike, we talk about the right treatment plan for the right person. It's customized. And I know transition specialists that are good, they don't judge, they just share the right treatment plan for the right client at the right time. And, from my own world, I had a seller a few years ago. We showed their practice to 4 or 5 private practice buyers due to the location. They all declined, and her best exit strategy was a DSO, and she hadn't considered doing that. And then on the other hand, we're selling practices and helping dentists and dental nachos continue on with private practice. So now what everyone will like is, what are some of the cons, right? What's interesting is the DSOs should talk more about the cons, right? Like when I talk to a patient about doing implants, I talk about the pros and cons. I don't just say it's perfect, right? So every buyer, every consumer wants to know the pros and cons. So what are some of the cons that might be out there for selling to a DSO?
Well, again, the devil's in the details, Paul, right? Yeah. So going back to it's important to have a team of advisors, because the cons are typically in the contract themselves. So understanding what you're responsible for after the sale. The cons sometimes is you might lose some clinical autonomy. Again, every corporation's different. I would say one of the biggest cons I hear for most people that do this at the end of their career is they're used to being the boss. They've owned their own practice. They've been in charge of everything for 30 years, and now they're not. So switching that mindset of going to work for somebody else when they've been the ones making all the decisions is typically one of the harder things emotionally for them to adjust to.
I think that's so key. And maybe as we kind of wrap up and give some final value, you know, in the transitions space, you know, when someone sells their practice and wants to stay on as an associate in their own practice, and then there's a new owner, just because there's a change in the financial agreement doesn't mean that the team and patients see that, right? So it's an awareness factor for buyers, and it's the same with the DSO, you know, world there too. And I think that, you know, being your own boss for many, many years comes with pros and cons, like we said, and it's, you can't just turn a switch. You can't just jump in a cold plunge and, you know, change and get out and
The
feel
stress goes
different.
away,
So,
right.
you know, I think what you've shared is, you know, just really amazing advice and things for people to think about where they are in this journey of exiting dentistry on their own terms, exiting dentistry in a way that feels good to them. And like we've talked about, it might be hiring an associate for a future purchase. It might be connecting with a DSO. Is there anything else you'd want to share with our audience? Because, you know, people could be listening to this next
Yeah.
week, a few years from now. If, you know, you're Mike Rogers, you deal with dentists, key resource and sponsor, Dental Nachos through DDS Match. Any parting words for our community or advisory words for us?
Absolutely. And probably the biggest is it's never too early to start planning, right? Having this conversation. I wish I could get to dentists that were 50 and start having this conversation of what is your exit strategy. And just because you meet with a transition specialist or a broker or anyone else doesn't mean you have to hire them and sell your practice that day. It could be 5 years down the road, it could be 10 years down the road. But the sooner you can do that with your team of advisors, it gives you more options for your transition and more control, which I think is what most of us want.
I love
So
that. Options and control are two keywords. And I'll share that over the 2018, I had a little seminar on how to sell your practice. I had a dental focused attorney there, and this amazing pediatric dentist was there and said, Paul, I'm just here to learn. I'm not ready to sell my practice. And then when she was ready to sell during the pandemic, she was ready and she got a good price. And she was, you know, I give her a lot of compliments because be proactive instead of reactive, because both of us have seen the downside of being reactive, the downside of waiting too late. It can cost you time, it can cost you money, it can cost you both. I think that's an amazing final word. Start earlier than you think in making the biggest decisions of your career. Well, Mike Rogers of DDS Match, transition specialist, truly appreciate you sharing with us the territory that if someone's listening and they're in your territory, just tell us one more time, which territories do you cover?
So I live in St. Louis, Missouri, and I cover about a 3-hour radius around St. Louis. So half of Missouri and half of Illinois for the most part.
Awesome, Mike. Well, our audience, thanks for sharing with us, Mike Rogers, and text buy to 215-543-6454. If you're looking to buy a practice, if you're looking to sell, text sell to 215-543-6454, or reach out to us at dentalnachos.com. Thanks so much, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Appreciate it.